Gabe, thanks for joining me at 7 o'clock in the morning. I apologize for, for getting you out of bed really early. But since you're smiling, why don't you kick off by telling us about Everything Bagel and how it kind of differs from the rest of the agencies out there?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. So I started Everything Bagel after about 15 years of being brand side, both in my own business and for someone else's. And through that process, have hired and fired probably a half dozen, if not more, agencies. Um, I don't think that agencies have bad people. I think the people who work at agencies are really smart, but I do think that the model's somewhat broken. It's very difficult to align incentives, and that has been a challenge for me brand side. And so that's why Everything Bagel came about was basically like, how do you get all the talent and all that cutting edge skill in one place that is still aligned with its client. And so what we do is we just take whatever tool is needed for each individual brand, and we slot that in without there being like a scope change or something else that we're metering. So we're not like metering spend or anything like that. It's just like, how do we increase your revenue um, by using these host of different tools? So whether it's email and SMS or combination of like paid and organic, changing things on the website, making landing pages, re-merchandising your store, things like that that just like need to get done in order to get things over the finish line.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's what really kind of surprised me when we were talking the other time about how you're kind of looking beyond the classic metrics and the ad spend. I really like that. So just changing gears a little bit, uh, I've seen a lot of posts from you and your team about TikTok in particular, and it's something that we talk a lot about with the agencies that we work with as well. Why don't you talk us through how you support clients with this channel? Like, give us the whole picture. What does that look like?
Yeah, so like TikTok gets misinterpreted as like a channel similar to Instagram, but it's not. So TikTok behaves way more like TV when you were growing up than a social network. Users are just flipping through channels, flipping through their feed and interact like watching 2 seconds and then flipping through, and then they'll thumb stop on something that they actually want to watch. And so it's really a discovery channel. I like to use the analogy like when you're watching TV growing up and watching cartoons, you never like got up, left the couch, left the living room to go drive to Walmart to buy the toy. Like you would always just say like, "Hey, I saw this toy in a commercial or this movie's coming out. I want to go see it." And then you'd act a week later or 2 weeks later. TikTok's the exact same. And so we look at TikTok really as a discovery channel. It's making up somewhere between like 15 to 25% of budget allocations. It's hard to go further because it's really not bottom of funnel as much as it's developing as a bottom of funnel with TikTok shops and a lot of the other initiatives they're putting out. It really is a discovery channel. And what we do is we basically measure our spend on TikTok. We use tools like Triple Whale to meter the attribution, but we also see a huge boom in branded search on Google about a week or two after we onboard a client onto TikTok, just because like people are now searching for that brand because they discovered it on TikTok.
Interesting. And what exactly, like, all that makes sense, but what exactly do you do for your clients in terms of, are you creating content? Are you
We make
managing?
TikToks. Yeah, we make TikToks. So we employed different creators to make TikToks like face on camera. We do a ton of editing of short form video for TikTok specifically. Some of it in CapCut, some of it just in editing software. But the idea is to be posting anywhere from 1 to 3 times a day, every day, putting more and more content out there that users are interacting with and not direct response selling. Like the whole point of it is just like very content marketing, very value add. We'll insert some direct response because we'll spark those assets as ads. Um, but those are typically hitting people in a flurry between different assets as opposed to just like a one off impression.
Yeah, interesting. And you mentioned, like, the way you're talking about it is it's very top of funnel, right? Like, if I'm understanding you correctly. But you did touch on like how they're building the ability to shop or make it a conversion location. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I think this initiative really took place back in like 2019, 2020, with like Instagram shops and Meta shops and YouTube shops and Google Merchant Center and all these things starting to integrate with social platforms. TikTok is very successful at on platform checkout in China and in other markets. They really made a push this year at the top of the year. Um, we were part of the beta for TikTok shops. It's really intuitive. It's really smart. The US market hasn't fully adopted it yet, but they're starting to, particularly with Gen Z. But for now, it's still like working out its kinks. They're definitely putting a lot of emphasis on it. I don't know if like you experienced any of it during holiday, but they were like stacking discounts. So if a vendor put a discount for Black Friday, TikTok will put something over the top to like really get you to check out on TikTok, understanding that there's like a friction point of somebody adding their credit card to TikTok as opposed to like a website. So they're definitely, oh, we found this up.
Mhm.
Um, there's definitely a huge push there. It'll become normal probably over the next 2 3 years here in the states. They're also pushing lives, so like live selling QVC style assets are going to become huge. Um, but I think it's still early for TikTok shops.
Yeah. Okay. It's very interesting. Now, how about other social channels? I mean, maybe I'm not using the best language here, but how does that play into, the strategy you implement for your client? Like, you even mentioned, like, SMS and all this, so clearly it's wide, but what about social channels? How does that play into everything?
Yeah, I think like every channel that your target demo could be participating in is something that we should be considering as a partner. It tends to be heavy Meta, Google, TikTok, just because that's where the majority of consumers are spending their time. But the whole idea here is, and why it's called like Everything Bagel, not to plug, but the whole idea here is like you as a user, you as a consumer, are not just digesting content in one place and
Mhm.
making all your decisions about your buys from there. So like I interact with TikTok, I interact with Instagram a lot, I interact with YouTube a lot. If I'm only media buying on one of those platforms, I'm getting I'm getting sniped by a competitor on the other platforms because the algorithms know that I'm in market for whatever it is I'm interacting with. So like if I'm in the market for shoes or sneakers, I'll see something on TikTok. If that advertiser is not advertising on Meta and Google, like I'm probably getting intercepted for a competitor brand. And so the whole concept here is be everywhere all the time by creating assets, both organically and through paid, that get to those users who are on the brink of being in market, get them in market, meaning that they're showing intent, adding to cart on different sneaker websites, for example, and then closing them either at point of purchase or right before it on Google or on Amazon. So that like we are making sure that wherever that user wants to check out, we've constructed a good funnel for them and a good impression system so that we're getting that sale.
Get it. Okay. That makes sense. So, don't don't leave any gaps in the social kinda landscape is really what you're getting at. Get it.
Someone's gonna steal your girl. Like that's what's gonna happen.
Get it. Okay. Now just wanting to tie this back to something we're both close to. So using, like, Amazon brands as an example, you know, how is the TikTok stuff you just talked about becoming more relevant for them? Like, what is the connection there? Like, how do they hang together?
Oh, there I could go on for 4 hours. Amazon's really like the main point of purchase for most users on the internet. It's been that way for years.
Mhm.
TikTok is a great discovery channel. So when you marry those two, you get a really powerful journey. We've experimented with things like deep link, where you run an ad on TikTok and the Amazon app on your phone would immediately open. So that item then gets into your search history on Amazon. Like it gets very sticky. Uh, we've worked with attribution links. Recently, Instagram actually announced that they're doing a direct integration with Amazon. That completely bypasses all the concern about privacy with iOS 17 and up because they're two first party platforms just communicating with each other. I'd anticipate TikTok doing something similar, unless that's an exclusive with Meta, but I doubt it. Um, just because being able to share the data between these platforms is super powerful. I mean, think of like what pixels were back in 2018 and 2019. Like the data was really rich and it was really exact. As a first party platform, they have the right to all that data. So Amazon and TikTok, if they can communicate the way that Instagram and Amazon are going to start connecting in the next year, like we're in a very different world. I'm curious to see what Shopify does to kind of step up their effort. Um, but honestly, like the Amazon connection is too huge to ignore, and honestly, where I see a lot of purchase journeys just completing. So
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting point you raise as well about the deep linking, I think is that's how you put it, which is a good segue into more practical things, right? So going back to the brand perspective, like how with all these things, obviously, like you said, you could talk about this for 4 hours, but how do they get how do brands get social media ready, so to speak? Like, if you obviously deal with this day to day, but if you were to sum it up, what does it look like?
understand the lifestyle or the end vacation that your product is getting or your service is getting the end user, and just make content about that because like nobody is going to nobody really wants to thumb stop on something to learn about a new service or product. Like they're really interested to see if there's a relatability factor. And so making sure that the content you're putting forward is the right content for the audience before you try to sell anything. I think like it's pretty clear when a brand is trying to do direct response or direct sales through organic. It doesn't really work. There's also another big factor. It's like I'd call it like a level two though. Making sure that you have multiple different faces talking about your brand or creating content for your brand is everything. Not only does it give you social proof that multiple people have approved of or giving credibility to your brand, but it also gives the opportunity to connect with different subsets of your market. So like female age 25 to 35 versus male age 35 to 45 for the same product. If you have both of those creators making content for you, then not only can it live on your page, but it also can get to those different subsets within the same market. And like that is something that you couldn't necessarily do with just like an image of your product. So that's really where we try to guide clients is organic really is your poster board for how life should be post purchase. So
Get it. Okay. So really, if a brand's thinking about getting into this, really what you're saying is they should be prepared to make, or at least be in the mindset to be able to make or churn out this sort of content, right? That paints that non-salesy pitch, like as you said, as you put it before.
yeah, we call it content marketing. Other marketers call it other stuff, but like this is it all ties into the idea of like brand formats and everything that's buzzy right now.
Yeah.
If you're not if you're not creating an environment where a user understands what their life is going to be like after they purchase, then like don't even bother trying to educate them about like how they'll get there because they don't know what the end result is, right? Like Nike sells Serena Williams, Tiger Woods, Michael Jordan. They don't sell all the like practice that has to go into becoming them through using your sneaker. It's just not exciting, but the user knows like, yeah, I'm going to wear this to practice. So it's just selling the end result through lifestyle marketing and content marketing.
Get it. Okay. So then you touched on or the we've touched on the organic side of these channels. Like what about the paid element? Like
Mhm.
what about like TikTok, for example? Talk to us about the paid side of that.
Yeah. So first thing on TikTok, you need to spark any and every ad. Please never make like an ad like you would in Instagram for any media buyer out there. Like it's not the same. You need to spark the asset. What I mean by that is you're basically taking the asset from your own page or from a creator's page, and you're running ad spend behind that ID. What happens is all the comments get aggregated, the views get aggregated. So when somebody sees it organically or somebody sees it paid, it looks like there's a ton of interaction there because there is. So that's like key to anything on TikTok. When we're running paid, we run it across the board between Google, Amazon, TikTok, and Meta typically. The allocations vary by brand, primarily based on the demographic. We have brands where like TikTok's higher, we have brands where Meta's higher, etc. But I won't get into that. The main things that we need to do in 2023 going into 2024, you probably heard other people talk about this, like targeting's pretty dead. Your creatives at this point should be sophisticated enough to kind of narrow in on the right demographic. The algorithms sure as hell are. So like we have brands that are solely for females age 45 to 65 plus. We've tested like not even targeting just female and just leaving it open gender wise. That algorithm is immediately finding that female demo and just giving it to them. So like you don't need to like create crazy exclusions. More so just like exclude existing purchasers if that's a business imperative, but like you don't need to like do interest groups or interest stacks. All those things are kind of dead now. Really, it's about creative testing and creative modification, and like that opens up an entire another conversation because people are like, "Cool, I'm gonna go make 50 of the same static asset with like different switches to it." It's like that's not really what's going to drive your delta. It's really like, do you understand the creative message that's working to drive purchases? And then once you figure that out, then you can start to create very different versions of that creative message, not like here's a picture of an iPhone with some text that worked, so let me make 100 of them and try and test it. Like it's kind of like a futile effort. Sorry, I've like touched 5 different topics just within paid, but
No,
typically
no.
what we're doing typically what we're doing is purchase objective campaigns on Meta. We've been running a lot of PMAX on Google. It's a really good tool. It's gotten way more sophisticated over the past, call it like 18 months. We still are running non-branded search. We obviously are running branded search, but we try to keep that at less than 5% of total allocation, just because like it likes to peacock and it's not really doing anything new. It's just capturing people who have intent. Um, on TikTok, we do try to season the pixel first if it's a newer account. So we'll run like a view content or an add to cart at most in the first month or two. If the pixel is seasoned, then we'll go to purchase. Although honestly, we've seen attribution on view content and add to cart objectives greater than purchase, just because it can be a lower cost per impression. So like we'll play that game a little bit on TikTok. Um, but overall, we're just looking at how these different campaigns on different platforms are interacting with each other. We'll oftentimes look at things on like a 1 day first click, especially during Black Friday, to see if like anything's immediately driving a sale. But overall, like looking at more of like a holistic attribution model.
Got it. Okay. Um, so yeah, I guess the next practical thing I had in mind was tools and human resources, right? Like, we'll get into the agency versus in-house, but at a basic level, what tools or people do you need to do all this if a brand's thinking about doing it?
Uh, we have a lot of people, and they're all really talented. So we have about 25 people on our team. That varies. We have art directors, we have designers, we have editors, we have animators, we have brand strategists, we have organic strategists, we have paid media buyers, paid media strategists. So like it does take a little bit of an army. More so that army needs to be highly, highly collaborative. So like I'll say on our team, we meet at least twice a week, just as a full team, to talk about every single client, what's hot for them that week, what needs to get accomplished, as well as what needs to get accomplished over the next month or two. Then we do breakouts. So like our creative team is mapping all the ads that need to be made for each client based on the client's objectives, based on what's working and what's not. That happens once a week. Then they go out, they create them. So tool wise, this is a good segue. We live primarily in Asana and Slack. Every single ad starts as a brainstorming board in Asana where we're throwing in different inspiration and different scripts. We are also using Air. That's really helpful in terms of collaborating on finished assets. You're able to like pinpoint different seconds and frames to just see like what the comment is or what needs to be tweaked there for a video asset. You're able to see the version history, so you can see how like the asset progressed over a week or two. We also designate that for like winners and losers. So like if an ad is live, it gets turned on as live in Air. We're able to see that. Everyone on our team is able to see that. If it graduates to a winner, that pings a Slack board that says like, hey, asset XYZ just became a winner. If it gets turned off, same deal. So like everybody can see everything and understand what it means for their department. And the client can see it and understand like what's happening behind the scenes. So Asana, Slack, Air are like the three main tools that we're using.
Get it. And an army of experts, clearly.
Yeah.
So next question though, agency versus in-house. Like how does a brand make that decision these days for this topic?
Yeah, I think it's really a gut call. There are pros and cons to both. So like there's no right one answer. It's really determination that management would need to make. I have found that when hiring an agency, I still had to hire partial in-house to manage the agency. So that was like the main reason why I started this firm. But the pros to having everything in-house is control. It's communication, it's ease of communication and fluidity of communication. You know, the CEO makes an announcement. The media team knows instantly what that announcement is. There's no dissemination of that information. You also have very tight control. Everything's to brand guidelines the first time. There's less variance, which has its pros. There's more variance if you hire an agency or a third party, but that has pros as well. It's not all negative. You get an outside perspective, you get different expertise. Also, agencies are working on multiple different clients and multiple different brands in multiple different industries. They basically see more pitches than you would have your in-house team. So like account structure comes up a lot with new clients because they've been doing one thing one way. And it's like, well, like we've actually seen it done 4 dozen other ways. Like this is actually the way that we've seen it be more consistent across different industries. So like people come to us like with like a traffic funnel instead of a purchase objective and trying to retarget that traffic. And it's like, yeah, like we've seen that story before. It tends to peter out pretty quickly. Things like that. The other part of having an agency is getting a lot of different creative ideas that you wouldn't necessarily get from an in-house team, just because they're exposed to way, way more and they already know what's working creatively for other clients or other competitors because we're looking at this all day long. Like we're not in your like the HR meetings or the internal management meetings. So like we have to absorb that externally. But once we do, we can pair that with our knowledge base, which can be advantageous. So
Get it. Okay. Good perspective, man. 2 final questions for you. So this is like outcomes themed. Like, you've mentioned earlier, SMS, you've mentioned email and TikTok and whatever. Like at a high level, what does a complete list what does a complete strategy kind of include when we're talking about channels or communication methods or whatever?
yeah, I'd say we'd start typically at a holistic high level and then we flesh out which tools. So typically like if you're making pet food or you're doing something that's like a specific diet or a specific product, but you have like 4 of them and they're for different cohorts, like we'd want to talk about like how do we qualify the user for each of those products because it's diverse. Like that's one example. Another is just what does this funnel look like? Where are we trying to guide users? What's their user experience? And once we figure out like what it currently is and what it needs to be to increase conversion rate, then we'll actually say, okay, so these are the tools that we're going to start to use and implement. So for example, like if we're saying, all right, we're going to modify your website, we have to re-merchandise everything. We're going to address your pricing because like you're doing 99-cent denominations, you're a luxury brand. We should actually just cut that to just be dollars, right? Like that kind of conversation. And then we'll go ahead, we'll reformat the website. So that involves software developers. Then we'll also make landing pages for certain collections that we know we're going to spotlight because they're hero products. That involves our design team, that involves developers as well. Then we'll also say like, okay, so we're driving people to these products. These are the unique selling propositions of these products. This is what it does for the user. Okay, what's the organic strategy? How are we selling the vacation organically? What's the lifestyle? And then what paid assets are more direct response? Where are they going to go? What sizes do we need them in? Things like that. So that's how we'll build like pre-click strategy. And then post-click strategy is like, okay, they've come to the website. What's our lead capture? What's our tolerance in terms of margin? Like, can we give away 20%? Can we give away 25%? Are we open to raising prices 10% so we can go even deeper? Things like that, so that we can get lead capture, fill a Klaviyo funnel, what that flow looks like. Is it an SMS on day 2? Things like that. So like, it really is like, what's the actual business goal? What needs to change in the actual environment of the website? Then we go ahead and address that, and then we'll build pre-click and post-click strategies accordingly.
Get it? Okay, so it's not a recyclable list for people to take away. By the sounds, you got to go case by case, right?
The tools are the same. The tools are the same, but it's like, are you using a Phillips head or a flat, right? Like it's not the same exact every time.
Get it? Okay. Final question is, what are the outcomes you personally like to see? And I think I know the answer, but examples would be sales, new to brand sales, repeat purchase, or whatever. What for you is the main thing?
Typically, people come to us for acquisition problems. Retention problems can be mitigated through marketing, but they're better mitigated through product. So typically, like we like to see drops in CAC, so drops in customer acquisition. We like to see improvements in efficiency, so global consolidated return on ad spend or ROAS, or you can meter it by MER. So like we like to see things get more efficient, meaning more profit dollars, meaning our client partners are making more money, as well as obviously scale. Like we're incentivized to scale, but we do it in a way that's sustainable. I'd say like 90% of our clients are actually bootstrapped. So like they take home what the profit is. So if there's no profit, they're not paying themselves. So like it's very important that like we are doing things profitably as well as scalable.
Get it? Okay. Look, Gabe, very interesting. Some of it was well outside my capabilities of my brain, but very very interesting nonetheless.
Sorry if I took us.
No, it's good. It's good to hear the insights of an agency madman, right? But yeah, look, very interesting, and we hopefully we can have another one of these chats as TikTok evolves and get your opinion again. But again, thanks heaps for making time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it, James.